Wow, we're hearing a ton of stuff about making a new trade deal with the U.S. I mean, Trump was at the Kananaskis meeting. I mean, he fucked off pretty quick, but yeah, I guess he's got a war to think about. Who the hell knows? I mean, he just does whatever he does. But there's talking about making a deal. There's this constant rumor mill about a trade deal between the U.S. and Canada that will sort of resolve everything. And, you hear weird parts of it, weird rumors, but I don't have to think about that. The thing that we have to think about in the mortgage business, in the real estate business is if there is a solution, if there's a treaty, if there's a new trade agreement reached between the U.S. and Canada, what happens next? What happens in real estate? What happens in mortgages? Okay. Does signing a trade deal and bringing an end to all this tariff uncertainty, does that immediately bring the real estate market back to life? Boom! Whoa, whoa, things flew all over the place. Whoa, everything's great now. Everything's great. Let's go. Let's go out and buy houses. Does that happen? Because there's no question that the uncertainty hanging over jobs, hanging over the economy in Canada, hanging over, what's going to happen next? Can things go, things got worse, they got better, they got worser and worser. I mean, it was very, very hard to follow. So if there is a trade agreement, if that happens, back in business, everything goes back to normal, let's get going with houses again. Does that happen? Maybe. By the way, I mean, I'm hopeful there's a trade deal. I am hopeful that there is a deal to save Canadian jobs. Yeah, God, everybody needs to be hopeful of that. Everybody needs to want that. That's logical. We want the steel industry to be fine. We want the aluminum industry to be fine. We want the automotive industry to be fine. We want all this uncertainty gone. We want good trade relationship with the United States. We want friendship with the United States to drop all the 51st state bullshit and just go back to having great normal relations. I wouldn't mind going to Palm Springs again. Yeah, Mrs. Mortgage guy won't allow it. Mrs. Angry Mortgage say, no, we're not going to the States. So rightly or wrongly, you got to live with it. So I would love all those things to be fixed. Will it completely change what's going on in real estate? Maybe. So what would happen in theory is that if everything's solved and everything's agreeable and it's a livable tariff arrangement that that companies are comfortable with, does that fix everything? And the uncertainty dissipates, the worry dissipates about the Canadian economy, and people just jump in and start buying houses again. That's not totally impossible. Now, there's things about it that don't mean it's going to go all of a sudden back to crazy town in 2021 because, the math has sort of forced investors out. It's not like rates are going to zero again like they were. There's no such thing as a 1.79 5-year fixed rate that's not reappearing because the trade war is over. So there's a lot of fundamental things that are different and that are problematic. And in fact, the end of the trade war would probably cause the Bank of Canada to say, all right, let's pause everything. We're going to pause for a couple of meetings more and just see what plays out after this, because we knew the trade war was damaging. We knew tariffs were damaging, but now that they're changed and sort of resolved, we got to sit back and watch how that plays out in the Canadian economy. So we're just on pause. No cuts, no increases. We're just on pause for a while. That would sort of slow down rate expectations of falling rates. That could happen. So what should we think about it? It should have some kind of positive impact on more sales occurring. I'm not suggesting prices would suddenly start rising. No, I'm not suggesting that. But instead of just this incredibly low level of sales, but Ron, they went up in May. So what? Okay. When sales are incredibly low, when they're basically on their back and there's hardly anybody buying houses, the fact that a few more people bought in May is not meaningful. Like it's a small increases. Like, let's face it, it's not like there's going to be no houses sold. Like, people are still getting divorced. People are still passing away. People are still getting moved in their job, on whatever. There's absolute inescapable reasons to sell houses that do come up. So we can expect there to be little fluctuations. But could you see a general improvement? Yes, you could see a general improvement if everybody feels the trade war is completely behind us and everything's good. Will it last forever? Unlikely. And I'll give you two reasons that are pause for concern. Again, I want a solution to the tariff problem. Every good thinking person should. That's just the truth. So here's a couple of ideas. The president could sign something. President Trump could sign something and change his mind 2 years later, or 18 months later, or 12 months later. If we know nothing else, we know this. He can change his mind. That's just factual. Things will change, ideas will, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a good reason. It could just be, yeah, I heard about some more fentanyl problems and I'm going to screw with them again. Okay. I mean, it's just uncontrollable. There's no way to really, he said Kuzma was the greatest deal that ever happened. Then as soon as he got reelected, he said, yeah, it's complete garbage. We got to change everything. So it could happen again. He could just change his mind again. And the other consideration is automobile companies who are controlled by the U.S., who are U.S.-based companies, could just say, I'm not going to bother. We don't want to be face to face with him changing his mind again. Let's just slowly decrease the amount of business we do in Canada. And the two Japanese companies, Toyota and Honda, could feel the same thing. Yeah, he could change his mind again. I know we got a thing in place, but yeah, let's just slowly reduce our exposure here in Canada. That's reasonable, right? I mean, that's what I would do if I were them. I would think that. So, yes, could he change his mind? Of course. Could other crappy things that go on in Canada keep harming our economy? Could the fact that we are overregulated, that we are overtaxed? I mean, one of the things that's happening in the U.S. too is another reduction in corporate tax. So if you're a company investing money to build new things or to create new businesses, where would you rather invest, U.S. or Canada? It's easy. So there are other systemic things that hurt us that aren't fixed by fixing a trade war. So that's the way to look at this thing. It's good news for jobs. It may only be temporary. If a trade war ends, everything's solved. Of course, it also matters how it's solved, what we end up with, which we don't know at all. But if it's solved, we'd expect some kind of minor bump in real estate transactions, just as people breathe a sigh of relief. People are standing on the sidelines say, well, I guess my wife just had twins. I got to do something. I got to buy a bigger house. Might make a move. But it also means that the Bank of Canada is likely to pause and watch the results of this new settlement play out. So we won't see the cuts we are expecting for the rest of the year. And finally, how's it all going to come in the end? I mean, 6 months from now, it may turn out that fixing the trade war didn't even help that much. So we have to sit back and watch.